In America, there's a burglary every 11 seconds, an armed robbery every 65 seconds, a violent crime every 25 seconds, a murder every 24 minutes, and 250 rapes a day.
This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you love underground music and movies, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed shirts, vinyl, CDs, and more. Go to portlanddistro.com. Plug in the discount code MikeHill666 for 15% off at portlanddistro.com. Good day, Ralph. How are you? How's things going?
I'm in the, first of all, hi Mike, and hi to everybody listening out there. Glad to be back here. I feel always when we talk, I have holidays, which is not the case, but I mean, like, I just finished my first week of the fall holidays because in German schools, we have 2 weeks of Easter holiday. So the week before and after Easter. Then we have 6 weeks of summer vacation. Then the new school year starts, and then we have 2 weeks in fall. And I'm in the middle of it. So like this Saturday, the weather here is fine. I will go to see Pink Turns Blue tonight, a band that I really love. The new record is excellent. And yeah, been watching a lot of movies, and actually I'm doing okay.
That's good to hear, man.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I have to thank you for turning me on to that Murder Bait record. It's pretty awesome, man. I remember you sent me this thing. You're like, this is something you got to listen to. And I've been going through their whole catalog actually since then.
Yeah. I got to give shout outs to my boy Mattia of the band Abstractor from Portland. He has this label Sentient Ruin, and he's releasing this latest EP, and I mean, he releases a lot of quality stuff. Some like most stuff is more technical, extreme death metal and stuff like this. It's not always my cup of tea, but he knows my taste, and he and I, and like you also, like share this love for Fields of the Nephilim and Killing Joke. And now and then he sends me stuff and says like, dude, this is something you got to listen to. And I listen to these tracks and I'm like blown away by how good this guy can sing and like how atmospheric this whole stuff is. So.
Yeah, I was surprised they were American actually when I looked them up on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's real quality stuff. And anyone out there who is into like, you know, dark sort of rock music, definitely check out Murder Bait. And I went back and on Bandcamp and I picked up a bunch of their stuff. And it's funny, like, yeah, it definitely feels of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
But the vocals, there's also this, do you remember a band called The Church from the 80s?
Of course, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Starfish.
I can hear a little bit of that too in there.
Yeah, but they're way darker and way more melancholic than the Church. But the Church were a great band.
Yeah, definitely.
Dude, I don't know if I told you about this, but have you seen the tour announcement of what will happen in the fall of next year in the States?
No.
The Mission will go on tour with the Chameleons and Theater of Hate.
Oh wow, Billy Duffy's former band before the Cult. Theater
Yes.
of Hate. Yeah.
Dude, and they will do like I think 30 shows or something, and I think the last one is in New York, and it's close to Halloween from what I recall.
Oh, wow.
So I want to check out if I can make it out there by that time next year, and we could go to that show or something.
Oh, count me in for sure, man. I'm 100%. And you know, maybe next year's Halloween will be a lot better than this year's Halloween. So So yeah,
Yeah.
that's I like the Mission a lot, man. That band was really cool from way back.
Yes, that's like one of like all these three bands are pretty much the essence of what I like why I started Ropes of Night, and like it's always an inspiration to listen to the Mission. They've got such a big catalog, and every record has at least like three major hits, and they're totally underrated. And I mean, the guy was in Sisters of Mercy as well, and so yeah, that should be a great tour. And the Chameleons, like they're one of my favorite bands, and I've seen them like 4 times now, and they're just always amazing live. Yeah.
There was an interesting thing that happened with some of those British bands in the '80s, where when the Guns N' Roses "Appetite for Destruction" record came out, I feel like a lot of those kind of post-punk, gothic rock bands suddenly wanted to do like heavy metal, hard rock music. I mean, the Cult. Who knows? Who knows if they took a cue from? I know that Electric came out around that time, in I think '87. But I remember seeing this band called Balaam and the Angel in probably about '87, and it had the guitar player from the Mission was playing with them. Can't remember his name. They had gone really deep into the rock and roll LA like look, the guitar player had like leather pants and a cowboy hat, like no shirt, and he was like trying to rip these like pentatonic blues solos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And some of it worked, some of it didn't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm I'm a guitar nerd to some degrees. Like I don't collect guitars. I'm really pragmatic. I only have the guitars that I really need for my bands. And now with Ultha Forever, I've been playing the Lucille, like the Gibson 335 one.
Right.
And I had to have it because Michael Gira has one, and I knew like if he can play it, it can go super loud. And I'm a tall guy, so I need a big guitar. So this has been like the Ultha guitar ever since, and I love it. And now for Ropes, like I've already gone, like this band is 2 years old. I've already gone through 5 guitars,
Oh, wow.
like trying them out, not feeling it, selling them again. And yeah, man, the guitar I'm totally obsessed with is Billy Duffy's Black Falcon, like the Gretsch guitar.
Yeah.
And it's super expensive. I can't afford it. Like with European prices, just way too expensive. I got like the next best thing, which is the Chet Atkins, and I'm super happy with this now. I sold the Rickenbacker I got a while back. But like in research for that, like Billy Duffy's on Instagram and he's active and he's always posting pictures for Falcon Friday. And he posted a bunch of videos, and there's also like interviews with him and Ian Ashbury. And there was a bit about like how they decided not to be a post-punk band anymore, that they wanted to enter the rock realm. And that's when he also changed guitars. He started playing Les Pauls and solid body guitars. And it kind of lost me at that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, he always posts like these old pictures. And if you look at them as like the Cult or like the Death Cult, they look fucking cool. And then they turn into this glam rock band.
Yeah.
And it's just atrocious. And most bands fumble with that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that Electric was pretty cool,
Yeah.
But my favorite Cult material is Love and the Death Cult and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Dreamtime, like all that stuff is that's their strength, really.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like speaking of the bands transitioning from post-punk or punk to like these heavy rock bands, I've never gave you a thank you, but so many years back you posted "Revenge" by TSOL music video, and I was like, oh, TSOL, I've always heard the name, I've never known the band. Well, I guess there was just a random punk band, and then I played this video, and it was like this acoustic guitar. And them looking fucking cool, like with their motorcycle gang kind of look. And I'm like, oh, wow, I got to check out this record. And like this record, Revenge, and the one before that, Change Today.
Yeah.
Dude, they're excellent. And I'm like, I like the old stuff with the old singer now, like going back at it. But it's like regular punk. But these two are like perfect at what they are, like this more punkish post-punk. But then after that, they became a complete rock band, and I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just not.
I have that record too. It's called like Hit and Run or something like that, and they got teased out hair, and it's like all right, like very like L.A. Heavy metal late '80s kind of thing, and it's that record's terrible. But I'm partial to the Jack Grisham era, like the early like Code Blue, Weathered Statues, which has like it's like to me. Not as good, but similar to Samhain, where it's like, okay, it's punk, but it's like very dark and gothic sounding. And they definitely had some very typical hardcore, like early hardcore songs. And but Revenge was like, man, Revenge and Change Today were, in my mind, kind of like unsung classics because no one liked those records because they were just like, oh yeah, we like Jack Grisham, and but yeah, that song Revenge and that entire album is just so. It's almost like a Gun Club record, really. It's very dark, and it has this like dark American, like kind of rockabilly vibe to it, which is so good.
Yeah. I remember when Ultha toured with Varnum, like that band with Kyle of Ashbore and Mike of Fell Voices, and Mike is like he's the biggest Dead Moon fan I ever met, and he's also a gigantic Cramps fan.
Yeah,
and he comes from like. From San Diego, he's from Santa Cruz, I think. But it's like West Coast punk kid, like went through hardcore punk phase, screamo phase, and then he started Fell Voices, and like he's one of the most knowledgeable music people I know. And like, dude, we were on tour here, and then we drove through the Netherlands. I was driving, and he was sitting in the shotgun seat, and I'm like, dude, do you know TSOL? And he's like, yeah, I know the first record. It's okay. It's like, so you don't know the later stuff, right? And he's like, no, not really. So, okay, so we'll drive. Everybody was asleep. It was just him and I awake. So I played Revenge. And like after every song, he's like, okay, pause it. I can't believe I didn't know this band.
Yeah.
Holy fucking shit, they're so good. Okay, next one. He's like, why the fuck didn't I know this band? It's like, then we listened to it and Changed Today back to back, and he was just like floored about how good these two records were.
Yeah, they're great, man. And for me as a kid in the 80s, I really enjoyed like that sort of dark Americana, like whatever you want to call it, like rockabilly influenced punk, like specifically X and the Gun Club.
Yeah.
I even listened to the Blasters, who were like a straight up like rockabilly group from LA. And that's when Revenge came out, and I didn't know, back then you just go to a record store, you're like, I want to buy a TSOL record, and Revenge, that's the record that's there. So I buy it, right? And it just fit so nicely within that, and this is the way they looked. Like they had this like real LA, like Southern California thing, like with the cool hair, and one guy probably had like eyeliner on or something like that. That's definitely a SoCal like thing, man. Not too many dudes in New York are walking around and with eyeliner on that go to punk shows,
But it's sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I had to say about it.
It's almost like in black metal, where corpse paint is like on the tip of being corny most of the time, and some people just pull it off and looks great. And I mean, if you look at like the hair metal scene back in the 80s and look at Poison and all these bands, and you're like, oh god, but they look so close to it and they're still cool.
Yeah.
And some in the European crust punk scene, you always have like these sausage hair stinky crusts and with anti-Cymax shirts and discharge this, discharge that. But there's always these cool like dark punks in between them. They're also like rolling in this crust punk scene. They've got the sprayed hair and everything, but you're just like, wow, this is like the beacon of light in a pile of dirt, And it's just like, I'm always jealous if people can pull this off, like, because I could have never done that.
Well, when I got in high school, I had a dark punk girlfriend, and I kind of like dipped my toe in that look a little bit with the sprayed hair and everything.
Yeah,
I'll send you a picture of the two of us, and like you tell me if I pulled it off.
Oh man, I can't wait to see that.
That was like the height of like just I give this lady props, man. Like there's probably two people when I was a kid that opened me up to the most music, and she was definitely one of them, who was like into stuff that I never would have listened to had I not met her, really. And she opened me up to like Bauhaus and Joy Division and The Cure and all that kind of stuff. We were both like really big Cramps fans. Like I'm actually wearing a Cramps t-shirt right now as we talk.
That's good for you. I just played like before we started this podcast. I was listening to the Cramps. And there's also, again, here we go with the guitar thing, because like Poison Ivy's also playing this big ass Gretsch Hollow Buddy, and like I kind of fucked with some Stray Cats the other day, because I always like thought like I need to like them, and now it makes sense, because I can fuck with like regular rock and roll in this kind of sense, And I mean, these guitars, like they come from there, and they all use them. Also, Kid Congo Powers, and when he played with the Gun Club, he also had like these big ass Gretches sometimes. And I think like the next, because like Tom, the singer in Ropes of Night, when we first met and we exchanged emails, his email was thegunclub@gmail.com.
Oh, wow.
Like, so here we go. And I think like the next like Rope stuff, we just wrote 2 songs and we record a 7-inch. It goes way more into that realm, and I think that's where the future of this band is also at.
Yeah, it's funny. I have riffs like that. You know what I mean? And actually, one of the cues for the Unholy Passion is this thing I was working on, which is like this kind of Lynchian, like kind of dreamy, like rockabilly kind of thing. And I was playing that stuff at practice the other day, and Drew, my bass player, was like, "Oh, I like that." It's like, really? Because I didn't picture him as a guy who would like that, but he's like, "Yeah, I listened to a lot of that stuff, man." And I was like, "Oh wow, I learned something new about Drew." And
cool.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a project. Maybe the new Tombs record will sound like the Gun Club or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was when you first heard like the jingle you did for our episodes, I'm like, okay, this is like some Six Bells Chime Crime in the City solution vibe going here. So yeah, I'm down for that always.
That's a whole other episode, man. All those bands, that we should do one. I know that you and I talked about doing a Gun Club one, but we got to touch on all this other music too.
Good. I have so many ideas. The list keeps on getting longer. It's good that we have all the time, and people still seem to be interested.
Yeah, man.
Let's see what they think about when we're done with this one today. But I think we will tick a lot of right boxes with a lot of people listening.
So today we're talking about Sylvester Stallone, the unholy Stallone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the beacon of light whenever you feel darkness, It's just like, I don't know, like I had the idea to talk about this when I was like feeling really down, and like everybody has their rituals when they're feeling down to go back up, and for me it was never drugs. For me it was always good food and good movies, and like going back to some of these 80s and 90s Stallone movies is always a safe bet to feel better afterwards. And I mean, I grew up here with like a dubbed Sylvester Stallone having like a cool voice, and he oddly enough has like shares in some movies. He shares the same voice as Bruce Willis, which makes it complicated watching it in German when it comes to like Expendables or stuff like that.
Yeah,
but it's just like his voice is the same. Like when I grew up watching Schwarzenegger in Terminator, he had like this really dark German voice, but not the way he actually talks, but like a straight up clear German, like rough voice. But then I watched Terminator the first time in English. I'm like, this is hilarious, because yes, I'm the Terminator and I'm here to kill you. And so like, how the fuck are Americans taking him seriously talking like this? But Stallone, he's got such a cool fucking voice.
That's funny. I guess in Europe that's an exotic voice, like this kind of like Italian American Guido, like like that. That's like probably you don't hear too many of those accents over in Europe, really.
No, not at all. Like no Italian here talks like this. It's always like this is the stuff like people make fun of when they watch Family Guy, because they always make fun of this Guido kind of stereotype. But that's like actually like when I like took notes for this episode, I wanted to like sneak in like the first question would be like, Mike, do you know the story of the chicken and the egg? Which came first?
Of course.
And I'm like,
It's a
yeah,
proverb,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, and like my proverb question for this is: was there Guidos before Sylvester Stallone, or was Sylvester Stallone the first Guido?
Are you asking me this question right now in
No,
real time?
that was like I thought about asking it in all honesty, but I felt like it's so stereotypical, and we could get canceled for this.
Oh, I don't care
So,
about that. No one's let him go. Let him cancel me. Who cares?
No, but he's the prototype for that, I think.
I have to say that in this case, art imitates life, because that whole thing has existed, long before Sylvester Stallone rose to prominence. Just that whole subculture in the United States.
Yeah.
There's a rich culture of Guidoism in the United States for sure.
Yeah. I mean, here, like, Italians are like, they're not. I mean, they're not as exotic. Like, I think I always like it's like when I see American productions and the Guidos, they seem like super exotic in their whole behavior and their theatrics. I mean, one of the first things I probably saw was the West Side Story in school, and they also have like these, the Jets and the Sharks, and they have like this greased up hair, and I don't know. Like I imagine, then when I saw the West Side Story the first time in English, I'm like, okay, so I see. But like, no Italian talks like this in Germany.
The real irony is that Guido is actually a German name, as like you pointed that out to me, but I already knew about that because of the famous Nazi Guido von List.
Yeah, but it's actually pronounced Guido.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So there's no W, and it's not Gui, so it's just Guido. Yeah, and that was, I remember I asked you about this. It's like, okay, so I heard you and Mike, or you and Jeff, like at Necro, use that word. I'm like, how the fuck do you spell it? And the first thing came to mind, because there's in episode 4, like the very first Star Wars, when Han Solo blasts this one bounty hunter in the cantina, the green one, he's called Greedo. It's Greedo.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's just like, I'm like, is this like, are they referring to Greedo? And it's like, no. And then you wrote it. I'm like, okay, this is the German first name, Guido. So yeah, funny.
So I love all the different subtleties, even though you and I are both speaking English. Just the weird colloquialisms that happen that make things like unusual and peculiar.
Yeah, and for us here, it's always. I mean, like all of my friends, we all grew up. I mean, English is a foreign language to us, and we all grow up with English music. And then I remember, like, when we were kids, and like I said in my Point of Entry episode over at Metal Matters, that the very first music thing I ever had was Bad by Michael Jackson. I think like in 89. And it's just like, I remember like sitting at home listening to it and imitating the sounds that I heard. Like I couldn't really, like, I think like when you listen to Michael Jackson when you're an American kid, you understand these words because it's the language you hear all the time.
Yeah.
But for me, that was something I didn't understand. So I imitated the sounds. And I think to this day, like, a lot of people just hear American words or English words and they don't know how to spell them. And I don't know how to actually understand what they mean.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, man. So the prolific career of Sylvester, Unholy Sylvester Stallone.
You mean Michael Sylvester Gardencio Stallone? Born July 6, 1946. That fucking dude is 75 years old, still hitting the gym and doing Expendables 4 and looking great at it.
Dude, that guy, not only is he hitting the gym, he's like jumping off of like rooftops and like, smacking people around and stuff like that. He's great,
Yeah, dude. So let me jump in with 66 to 32. So he's listed as main character roles or like talking roles because later on he's in a lot of animated stuff where he just lent the voice. Like, for example, in the new Suicide Squad where he's the shark guy, and that was awesome. 66 listings as an actor, and I've seen 32 of the movies. Yeah.
Wow. That's a hard-working guy right there.
Dude, and this is not, I mean, there's a lot of more stuff on there where he's not listed. The first where he's credited as an actual actor was in The Party at Kitty and Studs, where he plays Stud, which is awesome. 1970. Yeah, it's there's so much good stuff, man. When I printed out this list, I'm like, holy shit, he did so many great movies, and yeah, I have on my list now 5 movies I need to watch, and the first one is the one where he actually got his first kudos for, and I bet you've known it because did you ever live in Flatbush?
No, but someone that I used to see regularly lived the two neighborhoods over from Flatbush. Yeah.
Okay, because I knew the name, but I've never heard of the Lords of Flatbush.
You know what, man? I have that noted here as something to mention to you, that because that's actually a great movie for sure.
Dude, I just have you ever watched the trailer? I'm like dude, it's so good. I actually have it open and I wanted to play it like on this episode because it's just so hilarious. It's so 70s. It's like, okay, what do we need to do? We need to like have a song that introduces all the things about this movie. Is it cool if I play it for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Hey kids, the next song is dedicated to Butchie, Chico, Rippy, Stanley, Franny, and Andy, the stars of the new movie, The Lords of Flatbush.
Do, 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 do. The Lords of Flatbush is a movie about how life was in the 50s. A black leather jacket, a rumble or two, and a girl.
Enough. That's so cool.
It's like an R. Kelly song kind of, except he's not talking about like abusing women or anything like that. Like, you know how like R. Kelly's music is like very literal, very, you know, okay, when I did this, I did that. That's what this jingle is all about, man.
Yeah, dude. I assume you've seen that one, and you said it's great.
I've seen it multiple times, man. Multiple times. Yeah.
Dude, was this on like? Was it made because it was on the hype of Happy Days? Because I mean, has Henry Winkler in it, and he still looks like the Fonz. And I mean, he was like the prolific cool guy, and Stallone next to him, like 4 guys in leather jackets with the greased up hair that just looks so cool.
Yeah, this came out in '74, so at least in the United States, like there was this big interest in the 1950s that was like American Graffiti, Grease. I don't know if the dates line up exactly, but yeah, and Happy Days. I'm not sure when Happy Days was on the air though.
It started in 1970. I looked it up because that's what I was wondering. So it must have been a hype, and I think if there's there's a bunch of characters from American shows that like made their way into European, you know, like household names. But this and this is just like the look and the fonts. That was like one of the things people even here know. Yeah.
So it turns out American Graffiti was 1973, and that was like a pretty huge movie. And but that one took place in California though. That took place in like Bakersfield or something like that. And so yeah, there was like early 70s this interest in in the 1950s and that whole cultural thing with greasers, and so yeah, it made sense that a movie like this came out. And what's interesting about it is, and I highly recommend you see this film, is my dad, who he's like Stallone's age basically. So he was a guy who was actively in the 50s. He was like a tough guy. He was like grew up in the Bronx. He was in a gang. He ended up going to the Navy, like that kind of thing.
Oh man! Okay.
And he was actually telling me when we've watched this movie many times, and I'll probably rented it on VHS or something. And some of the stuff, like Flatbush is in Brooklyn, but some of the gangs were actual the names were actual gangs, but they were from all over New York City. It wasn't like the Baldies apparently were a gang in the Bronx, not in Brooklyn. You know, It seems like everyone was in a gang back then. Like you kind of had to be in a gang in the 50s. It seems like.
Yeah, it's like in wrestling nowadays. Everybody has to have a stable. There's no like singular person. Everybody has like their own gang. So like if you get beaten up, the others save you. It's kind of weird right now. But yeah, I mean this movie looks like something I really would enjoy.
Speaking of wrestling, I don't know if you're aware, he has a movie that came out in '78 called Paradise Alley.
Let me see. Yeah, I have it on my list, but I haven't seen it.
Where it's he's like a pro wrestling promoter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one definitely move that one up on your priority list there.
All right, gotta add it to the list.
Your list of action items. Yeah.
Oh man, there's a lot of that on there. It's like, I mean, you're knowledgeable when it comes to this. When did Stephen King start writing his stuff? Was it in the 70s already, or did he start later?
Yeah, he was definitely the 70s.
Because the first part of it, like the story of the kids, also plays in the 50s. Because like when I saw that trailer, like this I think it's Bauer, like John Bauer, Stephen Bauer, like the mean guy, the bully, in the like the original, like the Tim Curry It movie, the only It movie that matters. He also had like this greased up look, you know, blue jeans, white shirt. Also Stand By Me, same time. And so I thought like maybe he grew up in that time and started writing about this as well.
Yeah, all these guys that we're talking about are all roughly the same age. Like they're all like from mid 70s to like 80, like in that range. And Stephen King, so it makes sense that he would have been fascinated by the 1950s and had greaser characters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and also growing up, you know, around my dad, and you know, my dad likes music actually, and you know, the music they played was music from that era. A lot of girl groups, you know, like the Shirelles and stuff like that, and it kind of makes sense that I really was when I got into punk, that the kind of punk I liked had that flavor to it, you know, like the Gun Club and you know. And even Danzig, really, if you think about Danzig and the Misfits and all that, very much referencing the 50s and girls groups and, you know, stuff like that.
And the man himself, Roy Orbison.
Oh, dude, yeah, 100. That's huge.
Yeah.
I remember growing up hearing Roy Orbison and being like, you know, always loving his voice. And, you know, I hadn't been beaten down by life at that point when I was like 7, you know, so so I couldn't really relate to you know, the heartache aspect of Roy Orbison, but that came much later.
Yeah, it's like I've been on a huge Americana stroll in the recent times, like a lot of replacements, later stuff, Tom Petty, Ryan Adams, also like early Woven Hand and 16 Horsepower, and I found like in a second-hand bin, I found the Traveling Wilburys records.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like I remember that I saw the video with like this all-star gang, and back then I just recognized Tom Petty and Roy Orbison, because my dad is like one of the few cool things my dad was listening to was Roy Orbison. And I got these records and they're great. Yeah, they're really good.
So good, man. Really funny thing about Europeans and Americana. It's way back when Anodyne toured Europe. We played a show in the Netherlands, and it was at some weird venue where there was all these like hardcore style bands and, you know, emo bands playing, and we were on that bill. And then that had to be over by a certain time. And then there was like some big local rockabilly group that played. They had a show after the show we did. Okay. Right. So it was like these like Dutch greaser guys. Like they had like the stand up bass, and there's a trio, and they had these like heavy Dutch accents, and they were like, okay, daddy-o, you know, like talking like in, like they were from the 50s. It was like a fucking totally bizarre, very strange experience.
But dude, like, there's nothing worse than when it comes to German country music, because there's one band here in Germany like everybody knows, and I guess like for all the German listeners, and there are a bunch of them I know, all of these people will laugh now, but like there's a band called Truck Stop, and 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 they do like this stereotypical American country, but with German language, with German lyrics,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's like, yeah, dude, it's horrible. It's like dad rock, you know. They would play at an opening of a furniture store on a Sunday afternoon.
Opening of a furniture store. Hey, that's a good gig,
Yeah.
man. I wonder if it pays, something like that.
Dude, they probably for one gig get more money than we all like made in all the shows we ever played. You know, it's like you can like if you do stuff like this, or you play carnival music here, because carnival is really big here. If you play like German lyric, stupid ass pop music, or like these almost like folkish kind of things where people piss drunk in their shitty costumes, making out with strangers, can yell to and barf at each other, that's when you make the most money. I fucking hate carnival, and Cologne is like one of the biggest cities when it comes to that.
Got to keep that in mind, man, for
Yeah,
future
don't,
professional endeavors.
dude, totally. Or a cover rock band. Cover rock's also big. If you like play 40 chart hits for an evening for an audience of like a business associates or something, you can make hella money.
Fuck that, man. That's all I got to say
Saying
about
punk.
that shit,
We're
man.
saying punk, man.
Yeah, man. Punk as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Stallone. So, yeah, he started in the early 70s. So he like one quote I really found fascinating was, he's the only actor in history of US cinema to have starred in a box office #1 film across 6 consecutive decades.
Wow.
His first listing is 1969 as an extra, but in 1970 he started his first roles, and I think Lords of Flatbush was the first one that really got him attention. So from there on, even until now, he has had #1 movies in 10 years, all every 10 years. It's incredible. And yeah,
Yeah, real quick about Lords of Flatbush again. Not to stay. I don't want to like stay to the whole episode about the one movie. But yeah, he was. I don't think he was. I don't remember him being like the main character in that.
no, he's not.
Yeah,
No,
he's
no.
like a supporting actor, but he's in the poster though.
Yes, right. Then there's these four cool guys, and then what I said, like the fawns. I guess he was the center of attention. But yeah, I mean everything. I mean, funny. Like he has a movie in 1976, Cannonball, but like the movie he did after that cannonballed his career, which was Rocky. And yeah, he wrote, like, he's actor and screenwriter. Like he was nominated for an Oscar the year after for this movie. So this guy just came, saw, and conquered. Like he's the epitome of the American dream, I would say.
I would also say that Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Austrian immigrant, is also an epitome of the American dream. That he came to this country and achieved such heights of success.
Yeah. That wouldn't have happened with Donald Trump still being in charge. But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
of course, yeah. But that's like again, what makes them even, and that's maybe why they are to this day great friends and starred in many movies together. For example, the Expendables ones, which are good, and Escape Plan, which isn't, and opened up Planet Hollywood on the height of their success with fellow action superstar Bruce Willis. Yeah.
It's funny, man. Like in the 90s, it seems like action films, that's kind of like the golden age of action movies, in my opinion.
It absolutely is, man. If you check Stallone's list for the 90s, it's just like banger, 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 back to back. Well, in between there's Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, but then again, banger, banger, banger. Yeah.
There isn't that same level anymore. Even though a lot of action movies come out, I don't think that we're at the same. We're not enjoying this renaissance that we had in the 90s. Like they just don't stack up these days.
No, they always tried with Gerald Butler movies, but they're mostly like catastrophe movies. For once being catastrophe movies, but the other catastrophe is acting. But like there's just no one to fill the space when it comes to this kind of action. I mean, they did a good job with the two Creed movies, with him being like the senior and just like passing the torch. I enjoyed these two Creed movies very much, but again, it's not like an action movie. And I mean, I don't know. I love action movies. I watch a lot of them, even the newer ones. There are some of them that I really enjoy, but there's not this thing with like having this major action movie star who's connected to this like acting in these kind of movies. I mean, there's I don't know. Have you seen Sicario 1 and 2?
No.
You need to. They're the best action movies. They're absolutely stunning. They're dark. They're brutal. There's no superstar. There's almost no likable character, but it's the epitome of great action movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
yeah.
dude, I always wanted to ask you this because I was just so blown away by these two movies. They're so great. But it's like a different level. This over the top 80s and 90s action that's not done to this degree nowadays in this vein. They're trying to pass the torch. I mean, there was Die Hard 5 where he and his son, like his son is an adult now. And I think they tried to pass the torch, but that already didn't work. And I mean, The Expendables is just like a superstar combo of all these action movie stars, and it's so over the top. But yeah, man, if there's someone out there listening, can point me to the direction of a new action movie that has the same pull as these old 90s movies, holler at me. I would appreciate it.
The fact that they're trying to that they're doing this passing of the torch thing definitely is a sign that the older ones were way better.
Yes, of course.
I have to say, as far as action films go, I think the best action movies are being made in like Asia right now, like Korean action films.
Yeah,
so good.
The Raid, and stuff like this. Yeah. And the successful good ones are stuff like John Wick, and they're more like Asian than they admit to be.
Oh, without a doubt, man. And that's actually one of the criticisms I have of newer action movies is that, besides from John Wick, they just don't film them right. Like the fight scenes are like all cut up, so they're not actually doing any fighting. And like in John Wick movies, they're like these long shots of like martial arts scenes, and I think that's cool.
I think like I imagine like when we talk about 80s and 90s movie stars, I bet Steven Seagal watches John Wick and cries because that's what he always wanted to do, but it never worked.
Yeah, and he's kind of a hoax, really. I mean, in some ways,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know much about what's his thing, Wing Chun or whatever it is. Like, I don't know much about that, but
dude, like he now and then appears at some like fan cons, and he just looks absolutely atrocious. I mean, compared to this, Jean-Claude Van Damme is a real star, and like he's really not like he never. I don't think that I ever really enjoyed one of his movies back then. No.
Steven Seagal?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. Aikido. I think Aikido might have been his martial art that he was doing. Yeah.
I think
like
the only.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
Go ahead. No, you first.
Okay. In those Korean films, I did some reading about it, and they're actually like their punches are actually connecting in those movies.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah. And that's the same thing again when we draw the connection to my favorite topic, wrestling. It's just like if they really do full combat and full on, then it looks like, okay, this is actually hurting. And like the problem is with a lot of the stuff that wrestlers do is just like you look at it and you're like, this doesn't hurt. I wouldn't tap out to this move, to this submission. And just like in some moves, and like the good ones, the good wrestlers are the ones that really connect and really have like moves where you think like, oh damn, man, that's harsh. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say, like, I think the last franchise when it comes to action, and I guess that was a surprise hit, was the Taken movies. The first Taken one, The
Right.
first one with Liam Neeson was super surprising and it was awesome. But I think ever since then, Liam Neeson just does 3 movies a year with the same thing. Just like sometimes it's on an ice road, the next time it's in Japan, and it's always the same premise, and he always acts the same. But I remember when the first Taken came out, I'm like, this is a legit great action movie. Yeah.
He's getting a little. Well, I shouldn't say that anymore because Stallone is 75, but it's
Yeah.
Liam Neeson appears to me to be getting a little. He's starting to age out of doing action films in some ways.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What when we but speaking of action, I gotta say, I mean, I mentioned the Bond movies. The 5 Daniel Craig Bond movies are almost perfect in my opinion, and also a franchise I really like, and I really don't want to like it because I don't like Tom Cruise, but the Mission Impossible ones, especially the last 3, they're fantastic.
Yeah, I like those as well, and of course the Daniel Craig Bond he's my
Yeah.
favorite Bond, honestly.
Yeah, me too. And I know like the new one got hate from a bunch of people, but I don't give a rat's ass about that. I think it was a perfect conclusion to these movies, giving his character even more depth. It was more depth in a Bond character than ever before. And I mean, I grew up in the 80s with Roger Moore, and I always watched on like late night TV, watched the Connery ones. Love them today still. George Lazenby, all that stuff. But like the five Dane Greg Bonds are, in my opinion, when you watch them back to back, almost perfect.
Yeah, I still have to do that, watch them back to back. And now I haven't seen the latest one, so maybe I'll work something out where I can watch all of them one day.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, the second and the fourth, they have their flaws, and they're obvious. But from the continuity, and if you watch them back to back, it really makes sense and fun. Yeah, they're great.
But our man Stallone, though, is kind of the king of the franchises, really.
Dude, absolutely, yeah.
In First Blood, Rocky.
Yeah.
One of the most fascinating things about Stallone is the story of Rocky, really, the Rocky franchise.
Yes.
He wrote it. He was an unknown when his management, when he's like, I have to star in this movie. And apparently it took him almost like 10 years to have that film, to actually have the movie filmed and produced.
Yeah. And they're still holding up. So then, like, I think through Creed, they're doing a good job of making the younger people interested in it. And I already thought that Balboa, which came out in 2006, that was the first attempt to revitalize this franchise. And I already liked that one. And the 2 Creed movies, they're just also really good. And my kids in school always ask me, like, have you seen them? Have you seen them? Because I do like 2 months lessons on film music in the 10th grade. And so we always talk about, like, in franchises, how much the music affects them. And for them, it's always Eye of the Tiger. That's Rocky. It's like, this is not Rocky. It's Rocky 3. But like the actual jingle, and then I play, it's like, oh yeah, this is always in the movie. So I'm like, yeah, see, that's what the title theme technique is, that you have like a melody that connects with the audience and spawns like this interest in watching the next part. And it's almost never been done better than in Rocky, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen Rocky 1 through 5. Okay, I have to admit that I haven't watched Balboa.
Do it.
Okay.
You won't regret it.
I will.
It's good. It's an interesting approach. And then the 2 Creed movies, they're really good. They're really what the best you could do out of this old franchise to make it appealing to new audiences, and having like Stallone in them as sort of a backing to make it legit. It worked better than in Die Hard 5.
Yeah, I tapped out with Die Hard after like the first 2.
Oh, the third one is amazing, dude. I love the third one. That's with Jeremy Irons in New York. Mm-hmm. And it's like a buddy action movie because it has Samuel L. Jackson in it. But the third one was is hands down still one of my favorites in the whole action movie franchise thing. It's really good. After that, 4 and 5, total trash.
The first two Rockies, Rocky 1 and 2, are definitely those are my favorites. Okay, because they have like I'm not going to say they're realistic, but there's like a, it seems more based in reality. And then the other 3, 4, and 5 are like obviously going into flights of fancy, and but are still fun though. Like with Clubber Lang, Mr. T, and Rocky 3, Drago. It's awesome.
Yeah. I still like in the fifth one where he's like the cocky rich prick that has to like land on his face to like go back to the ground and start over again. I think that was a cool approach, because I also think it's related to like his stardom, because like he also had to go back to the bottom at some point, like Stallone himself. But yeah, the first two again, it's like if you watch it nowadays, you think like, oh, a guy who would behave nowadays towards a girl, he would have problems. But it's a testament of time, and like I still love these two. But I gotta say, I was always more of a Rambo fan than Rocky.
Yeah, the Rambo franchise was like a little bit cooler. You know what I mean? It was like, a little, I don't know. There's something about, I always like the kind of lone guy, like, on his own loner storyline. And I really like those.
I totally can't see this with you. I don't know why. It's totally not relatable.
But in the case of Rambo, I did watch Rambo 2008, and I that was quite a movie, man. I really, really, really enjoyed that one.
It's a really bloody movie.
Dude, it's like watching like Cannibal Holocaust or something, you know what I mean? It really is. It's like a high budget exploitation film, really.
Dude. And then you should watch Last Blood of 2019, dude. It's like, I mean, there one scene in 2006 in the 2008 one where he has like the minigun on the Jeep and like blasts the guy who sits in the front seat and just like keeps on blasting him. It's almost like watching RoboCop, the first part, where he's like where Ed 209 like shoots this guy and like the arms fly away, the head flies away, the torso explodes, and it's just like so over the top. And then with Last Blood, man, it's just like I've seen a bunch of like horrible scenes in movies, and like there's just like he interviews a guy to find out where the missing girl is. That's like pretty much the premises of that movie. And like when the guy doesn't talk, he just I don't know, like I think it's not the cheekbone. It's like there's these two bones at your chest at the top, which are like kind of like going to your shoulders.
Oh, the clavicle,
the ones
collarbones, yeah.
Yeah, and he just like he uses his hand and just like slams into it. Like his fingers penetrate the flesh, and he just breaks out the left of these bones of the guy. And like in the cinema, I'm like, oh my fucking god! It's just it's so over the top. But
apparently,
it's really
those bones are quite hard to break.
Not for Rambo. Not for Rambo being 75 years old. Dude, but it's really entertaining. It's enjoyable. Do it. Like, do yourself a favor and watch these movies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on my list actually to watch Last Blood.
Yeah. Now they're really also like I can also see that you like the Creed movies. Like they're different and they're more like focused on. I mean, it's about the son of Apollo, and but it's an interesting story, and it's about work ethic and training and keeping focus, and that's something you always like embrace, I think. So it could be something for you too.
Yeah, definitely, and I always enjoy a good boxing movie, definitely.
Yeah, and it has great boxing scenes, good training stuff, and yeah, it's a cool movie. Yeah. So should we take a deep dive into our favorites?
Yeah, because this dude has a lot of great movies, man. And I not only do I have a top 5, but I also have like a runner-up list too.
Yeah. Me as well. And I gotta say before we get into it, I mean, there's the obvious choices of like Rambo and Rocky because that put him on the map. But I gotta say, as I mentioned earlier on, Stallone as well as Schwarzenegger, they're the guys that when the blockbusters came to move like to the TV sets, like 2 years after they were in the cinema back then, it was an event. Like as a kid, you waited like, oh, there will be Terminator on TV the first time. So you waited around on a Saturday with your family and watched these kind of movies. And then some of them they got repeated, especially like the 80s stuff got repeated, and like the afternoon slot on holidays, for example, Christmas or Easter. So like I grew up with a lot of these movies and they made my list, and I bet they're not on the top list of other people. But should we start from 5 to the 1 and then go to the runner-ups?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
My number 5 is Over the Top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good arm wrestling movie's good too.
Yes. Yeah. It's just like one of these movies, and again, like the German listeners will totally know, like RTL, like the TV station, on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon during Easter or Christmas, it will be like Bud Spencer movies, like this Italian guy, and Over the Top is pretty much regular guest in these slots, and it's just like this. Like you're really rooting for the guy, and to make it possible that his son like gets back in love with him, like to like find his love for his dad back. And with the mom passing, it's just like a tearjerker. And also like when he turns around, his baseball cap is so iconic, and I think he's the king of making stuff iconic.
That's true. I think he definitely is responsible for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 5 is Nighthawks from 1981.
1981.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Dude, it's he co-stars with Billy D. Williams in this movie.
Oh, wow, nice. Yeah. Okay.
And in 81, Billy D. Williams was like still a pretty major star off of Star Wars and all that. And Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman, was also in that.
Oh, hi.
And it's like a gritty New York City crime film, and nice. Stallone acts like he's not relying on taking off his shirt. You know what I mean? He's like, I think, fully clothed in the entire movie.
Yeah.
He has a beard. He has a beard. Kind of has like this like Serpico look about him, and his acting is really good in that movie.
So it's the complete opposite of 1970s Party at Kitty and Studs, where he plays stud, because there he has no clothes on and he can't act.
Right.
Number 4, Demolition Man. Again, typical 90s thing. Wesley Snipes, cool guy back then. Love him. Love the Blade movies. Love Passenger 57. So over the top. The muscle thing, like with why do you not have toilet paper here? It's like, oh, we don't do this anymore. And it has Dennis Leary in it, and always like, it's. Have you seen Demolition Man?
I haven't, man. I was going to say that I haven't seen this one.
Oh, dude, you're in for a treat. Oh man, it's okay. Then you don't get the joke. Like, oh, it's so funny. The story is so weird. It's just like. Wesley Snipes looks like Dennis the Menace with like dyed blonde hair and like this jeans, and he's like one super villain. And he gets frozen, like carbonized sleep, and he like gets awakened back in like 2050 or something in the future. And there's no crime anymore, and all of a sudden he like gets defrozen, and Stallone is like the super cop, and he gets frozen too. So they unleash him, and then they fight in the future. We're not allowed to swear anymore, and there's no weapons anymore, and it's just so, again, it's over the top, but this movie is really over the top, but it's funny and as well as good action. Yeah.
My number 4 is 1996's Copland.
Ah, yes. Yep.
I would
it's
say
a runner-up for me, but it's awesome, yeah.
It's kind of a classic, really. It's like an unsung classic in a lot of ways, and once again, Stallone acting. Like, he's like fat in this movie, and at least fat for him. Like, he's like pudgy in this movie. And he kind of plays like this schlubby sheriff in a town in New Jersey where all these corrupt police officers live from New York City cops.
Yeah.
And it's got an all-star cast. It's got Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Michael Rappaport, Annabella Sciorra. at the height of her powers in 1996. And Janine Garofalo's in it too.
Oh man, yeah, that's such a good movie. I remember, like, I wrote down the Ponderosa incident. Remember the times when cinemas had still were like actual films they played through the projector?
Yeah.
And the sound reel and the film reel were different reels, so they had like to start two reels.
Yeah, sync 'em
I
up.
went I went to Mannheim back then, where we met, like at that Anodyne show back then. They had like a big cinema, and I went there to see Copland, and it was late on a Friday night, like at the 11 p.m. Screening. Pretty empty cinema, so I like this when it's empty. Got the room for myself. The movie's halfway through, and there's like this one scene where Stallone walks towards the camera in his chubby look, and he has a pump gun in his hand, and all of a sudden, like, you can hear like the sound going. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then in the middle of the screen, do you remember the bonanzas like start where they have the map, and then the fire starts in the middle and burns to the outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that happens, just with a white screen. So
man.
something caught fire in the screening room. So first it burned down the sound, and then the film melted.
Wow.
I just remember seeing the first time Stallone walking towards the camera. All of a sudden, in the middle of the picture, there's this white dot, and it got bigger, and you could see like flames. And it's just like all of a sudden, you have to leave the cinema. Please get out, everybody, real fast. So like something burned. Yeah, so that was the Ponderosa incident. But I watched it after that 2 times, and it's a really good movie. Yeah. And also, gotta say, one of my runner-ups is where is it? It was 1996 Daylight, one of the proto-action movies with I think it's in New York too, like where people get stuck, like in the traffic in the tunnel, tunnel collapses.
Mm-hmm.
It's a regular cool action movie, but I rewatched it the other day, got the Blu-ray for €5. And I have to say, he never looked as lean and handsome and sexy as a motherfucker as in this one. Like, he's a smoker, man. And
it's a smoke show. He's a smoke show in that one, man. Yeah.
And he was in 90s. That was in 96, and the next movie was Copland. So I imagine him like being in the shape of his life, doing this action movie where he climbs in these tunnels underneath New York. And it's like, okay, the screening is done, so here's your next script. So you have to eat now. So for like a year, he just like slobs up and eats all the stuff to get in shape for Copland.
Yeah, that always blows my mind how actors do that, because it's pretty insane.
Yes. Number 3, First Blood, the first Rambo. I guess that's the number 1 for a lot of people. I'm pretty sure I know what your number 1 is, but it's like First Blood. It's just so iconic, and it's flawless, great movie. Spawned everything that is action nowadays. Yeah.
Actually, that First Blood is my number 3 as well.
Huh.
Isn't that funny?
See? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not much we can say about this movie that hasn't been said 1,000 times. But it's again, like, making stuff iconic. The Bowie knife and the red bandana. Whenever I see a red bandana, I see Rambo. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that look carried over even like into other films. I mean, you remember Lost Boys?
Yeah, of course.
The twins. Yeah. They totally reference First Blood.
Yeah, of course. Like Danny, again, shout out to my best friend Danny. She came to the game with action movies late, and she started blasting through all these cool movies. And for me, it was like, oh yeah, cool. I have to rewatch that again. And she got completely hooked on the Rambo franchise. And actually, like, for her last birthday, I wanted to give her like a plastic replica of the knife and like a red bandana.
You should actually get her the actual knife.
You can, if you Google it on Amazon, there is like, you can buy an actual Rambo knife for €200, which is like a replica, like an actual knife that is like shaped after the Rambo knife. But I think, like, who needs that in his life? I don't. But my prediction, and you don't have to react, I just predict my number 2 is your number 1, and it's Cobra.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cobra should be my number one, but I've seen it later than all the other stuff. It's Stallone at his very coolest. I mean, slicing pizza again with a Rambo knife, and no, it's even the one that also has like the brass knuckles like attached to it. It's even cooler. The dialogue's been referenced in so many hardcore records with samples, and it's my number one is just because I've watched this movie when I was young and I love it so much because of the premise of it. I will come to it, but Cobra is my number two.
My number two is Rocky, and like when we came up with these lists, I had to come correct and be honest, man, because that's the first Rocky. Was very influential on a lot of aspects of my life. I was into sports. I wrestled. I played football. I did martial arts, like all that kind of stuff. Later on, I did a bunch of things, and just like that, the whole scene of him training and running and doing push-ups and eating raw eggs. I never actually ate raw eggs, but was like so iconic to me, and it really set the stage for a lot of the young man part of my life.
Yeah. It's like is it, I don't know, is it God, not Karate Kid, Karate Tiger? Is that like the title of the American movie as well with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
No, I don't believe that's the American version of that movie.
What's that first Jean-Claude Van Damme movie where he's the bad guy and fights like the guy, like the young guy who trains by himself and does these crunches hanging from a basketball hoop?
Oh fuck, man! I can't remember the name of the movie.
But that also has like these crazy ass training sequence about him getting in shape to fight Jean-Claude Van Damme, and that's what I always like. All these I have on Spotify I made a motivational mix, and it has like all these songs from these movies in it. So when I'm in the gym and like grinding it out sometimes, and I put this movie on, it's so silly to like work out to Rocky music, but it works really well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the U.S. Title of that movie is.
Karate Tiger. That's such a dumb name. Because I remember, Karate Tiger, 1986.
Oh, no retreat, no surrender.
Let me see.
The title, the plot sort of fits that, because he's a bad guy in that movie.
Yeah, Karate. Dude, why does it's shitty German?
It has to be no retreat, no surrender, because he's a villain in that movie.
Yeah, Karate Tiger, the champions. Yeah, no champions. No, that's Ken Shamrock. That's 97. That's dumb. Yeah, whatever, man. It's not as important. And Jean-Claude. We couldn't fill an episode on Jean-Claude Van Damme. Maybe on him being the Predator in the movie. Yeah. Have you ever seen the footage of him as the Predator? Oh, dude. Oh, God. Go to YouTube and type in Jean-Claude Van Damme Predator. There's test screenings of him in an orange suit. He looks like a cockroach. It's like an orange cockroach running through the forest, and that would have almost been Predator. It's insane to see that. And he's there's interviews with him from back then where he's totally coked out. It's I really don't know if I want to do this movie, if I should do this movie. It's just it's horrible to see that. Yeah, but fuck Jean-Claude Van Damme. Stallone. My number one is Lock Up.
Oh yeah, man, that's a good one.
I love prison movies. I always loved them, prison break movies. And it has Donald fucking Sutherland in it. And you just talked about it. You just talked about in Necro, about Body Snatchers. This guy, whenever he's the bad guy in a movie, it's awesome. I rewatched Outbreak. We talked about it a while ago, amidst the pandemic. Donald Sutherland makes a movie classy instantaneously. With him, it's John Amos, Tom Sizemore. The prison stuff, him breaking out, him being in shape, being the good guy, helping the kids, playing with them in the beginning before he has to go to jail. such an epic movie. I love this movie to death, and it's my favorite Stallone movie.
Well, you probably know what my favorite one is, and that's, you mentioned earlier, was Cobra,
Yeah.
which is by far
Yes.
that's like my number one movie, because it's like so different for him to make this type of film, really.
Yeah.
You know, because it's almost a horror film, really.
Yeah. It's so brutal.
Yeah. 1986, interesting side note, directed by George Cosmatos, who was Panos Cosmatos' father.
Oh, man.
You know, and of
Oh,
course
man.
Panos did Mandy and Beyond the Black Rainbow and that kind of stuff.
Yes. What a family, man. It's almost like the Cronenbergs.
Yeah, and apparently Stallone wanted to rewrite the script, and he had some concept of it being even more violent than it already is.
Oh, man.
And he was like very invested in this movie. And for anyone out, it is a bit of a sleeper. Like it's not like when people think of Sylvester Stallone, they normally don't think of Cobra. You know what I mean?
But I bet a lot of people know the artwork because the poster is so iconic. I bet they know the poster, but I've never watched it because they think like it looks corny. But it's one of the most, like, the coolest action movie posters ever.
And just his character, his name's Marion Cobretti in that movie, right? And he's just like, so, like, you know, he got the sunglasses, like these engineer boots. He's got these pistols with cobras on them, and he drives a muscle car. Everything about him is like awesome in that movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Probably some of you guys out there are like, oh, in other words, he played a douchebag. I'm like, yeah, he did, and I think that's awesome. You know.
Yeah, but he nailed it, man. It's just like you can only be jealous of him in this case, you know?
That's what I'm saying. You know, he's you know, he's kind of like this sullen, you know, loner, like he's like in the zombie squad, whatever the hell that is. Like there's these like, you know, outsider cops or whatever. And the funny part about it is like he gets criticized for using excessive force, and which is really like such a thing in the 80s where, you know, the cops were like, it was cool when cops like beat people up and stuff, you know, and he's like, oh, you know, was it necessary to do that? He's like, okay, I came at him with all I got, you know, like he's like, yeah, of course I use excessive force, like that's how I do things.
And dude, like, look at this canon of like between 1985 and 1989. Let me just read the list of the movies he did there. 85, Rambo Part 2, Rocky Part 4. 86, Cobra. 87, Over the Top. 88, Rambo 3. 89, Lock Up, Tango and Cash. 1990, Rocky 5. That's his back-to-back movie catalog in 5 years. Unbelievable.
That rules. Like that, and that's one of the things I really respect the most about him, where he's like, all right, I'm an actor, I'm gonna fucking work, man, I'm gonna do this. You know, that I'm always like respect that.
Yeah, and it's almost like the bands that we often talk about. Like nowadays, the cool bands, they take 5 years, 40 years for a new record. Back then, like the whole post-punk bands, like they blew out one record after the next, year after year. The Cure's trilogy of like Faith, Pornography, and damn, am I stupid? 17 Seconds. They were like in 3 years, these 3 records came out, and like Slayer, the same thing. Like it's unbelievable that bands were so prolific and worked so hard and recorded all these records in such short time. And I bet you if we would do the same thing with Schwarzenegger back in this time, we would have an equally amazing list with him.
Yeah, totally, man. And I just think that's great when there's always output from people doing creative stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I remember listening to an interview with Eli Roth one time, who I have to say that I'm not the biggest fan of his films, but I like him as like whenever he's on a, you know, like a show or something, or he's being interviewed about horror, or I think he's cool, you know? He was talking about, you know, people criticizing him as producing genre films, you know, and it's like, oh, well, you know, it's like, he brought up a really good point. He's like, well, what are the movies that people remember? You know, they remember like, you know, some of the films that we talked about with Sylvester Stallone. You know, they remember Halloween. They remember The Fog. You know, they remember Friday the 13th. They do not remember your shitty art house film. And I'm like, you're absolutely right, man. No one gives a fuck about your fucking abstract bullshit that you do. People remember these genre films. You know, it's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't appreciate a good art film, but you know, it's I don't get like pretentious about it.
No. Didn't he do Hostel? Isn't that an Eli Roth movie?
Yeah, I never really was into those movies, honestly.
Oh no, that was like one of the worst parts. I think the first they came the remake thing of the Japanese movies with The Ring and The Grudge. And I enjoyed them back then when they came out, especially like the original ones, not the American remakes. But they had something going on. But then after the 12th girl with black hair coming out like from TV screens or toilet bowls, I don't give a fuck. It's like it was done, but then the whole torture thing happened. I mean, the first Saw was okay, but everything after that was horrible. And Hostel was just fucking bad. I never liked that.
Yeah, I'm not a big torture fan, honestly. It's like, I mean, like, I don't know, man. Like, I like women, you know, I don't get off on women being tied up and just brutalized, you know, and abused. That's really not. I never understood that as being like horror, you know, or it just seemed like very. And I'm not just saying this because we live in like this weird, you know, world where you can't say things. Even back in the early 2000s, I was like, this is like not my thing. I don't like seeing women get beat up or hurt or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just it's weird that people really enjoy stuff like this. But yeah, back then they got a kick out of it. And when I talk to kids in school now that are like you know, like we were when we were kids, it's like pushing boundaries, and now they can just access the internet and watch everything they want within like 3 clicks. And like one of the like a big ass, like he's 15, but he's like a tall guy in 9th grade, and he's doing workout a lot of times because he's like in a fighting school of his dad, and he's like the tough guy in the school. And he came up to me, he's like, oh yeah, I really enjoy horror movies too. I'm like, okay, so what have you seen? And I thought like he'd go, yeah, I saw It or something. And I'm like, well, okay, so what have you seen? Oh yeah, I love Hostel. I'm like, really? Ugh, this is the stuff you like, man? And you're in a fighting school? I don't like this combination, you know? But
let me ask you a quick question about MMA and martial arts and stuff like that. In Europe, in Germany, that's kind of like this like right wing kind of thing, isn't it?
Oh no.
Okay.
No, you have. I mean, you have like whatever could be attached to right wing. The right wing assholes will find, especially when it comes to like discipline and like, you know, like also straight edge. I mean, we talked about this on a side note in one episode that there's a Russian straight edge movement of fascists because they promote clean blood, you know, they just like take these ideas in the wrong way and make them their own. And of course, like if you there's this do you know Pest Noir?
Yeah,
I assume you do. Yeah, it's like they changed from this proto-Nazi black metal band to almost like a tough guy hardcore band. On the like one, I just saw someone sent me a video of them, and it's like it looks like a hip hop gang video where they're all like are like jacked up, wear white wife beaters, and like people doing like high kicks and shit. And they're also promoting like the MMA fighting. I'm like, this is not what MMA is about. But like they just take it for their discipline, and we have to fight our enemies and blah. There's MMA here, and like it's not as big as it's probably in the States. You can do trainings, more like Muay Thai and stuff like this.
Yeah, Muay Thai is huge in Europe. I know that. Kickboxing is like, you know, the Dutch or that's like their thing, really, you know.
Yeah, there's again one wrestler that you would also enjoy. He's from the Netherlands, and he just like skipped over from WWE to AEW. He's called Malachi Black. And he's like, I mean, he's first like in WWE who was Aleister Black. and he had to like drop the name, so he's Malachi Black now. And he's like one of the guys we also would hang out with. He comes from the hardcore scene. He's friends with Dwid, and his entrance music in AW is Amon Ra.
Oh, nice. Cool.
And and he's got a huge knowledge of like the horror and occult. He's got his own like occult merch company, and I listened to a bunch of podcast episodes with him, and it's like, if you're interested, I can send them to you.
Yeah, please.
I think
I'm interested.
Yeah, you will appreciate him too. And he's talking about like, because like pro wrestling is not popular in Europe on TV, yes, but there's like not real small leagues. And he tells the story that he like grew up watching WCW. But since there was no wrestling he could do, he got into martial arts, and he trained Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and he went to France and to Spain and to like train all these different fighting skills. And he's not like your classic wrestler who's doing like flips and like all these crazy ass moves. He's doing like more like mixed martial arts things. And this combined with his look and his character, and he's fascinating. I will send you a bunch of stuff over, because he's also doing his own vignettes. You know, like with him being possessed by a demon in a way.
Cool. Yeah.
It's like you would totally love him. He's pretty much the only one after Bray Wyatt who could do like what the Undertaker did in the 80s, like have this dark image and being serious about it and not being completely corny. And it's like, I just came to it because he also talked about like doing Muay Thai and it being big in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands, because he's from there.
Yeah, that's like, because in the States, like especially Muay Thai is like, I mean, usually I'm like, being like a white guy is like the minority in like a lot of these places I train at. Like most of the people are, it's like a very culturally mixed thing to do Muay Thai. And even like the MMA schools are like very culturally mixed. It's not like it's all these like, you know, like right wing like guys, like white dudes or whatever. And I was just curious because I always thought Europe had that like that kind of like vibe, but
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are these dojos where these assholes train, but yeah, as I said, like if you're a Nazi, you don't have anything of your own. You will just steal what others have and make it your own, because that's kind of how these assholes roll. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. This was a fun episode for sure.
It definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week.
spark synaptic sequence, cold start now, sputtering cough. I'll be